welcome to WorldView Finder episode 27.
Look at us.
We did it.
If you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, we got a new setup.
Ooh, and we got headphones on. We can hear each other.
So hopefully we won't
look
have sound
legit.
issues like we.
That's true. So
It
And
won't
then
sound like a robot.
we also have a new soundboard.
Hey.
New podcast that I'm excited about.
the possibilities are endless.
The annoyingness that I can now produce in this podcast. So hey, anything exciting happen this week? It's been a little bit.
We had the fall festival.
Fall festival.
Best.
Man,
Chris went 12 times.
I ate a chicken and waffle sandwich.
Is that the best you had?
That's new, right?
Yeah, it was a spicy chicken sandwich,
Okay.
but it had waffle buns and then powdered sugar on it.
Waffle
syrup.
Buns.
It was
I was going to say that was my nickname in high school.
waffle buns.
I don't think that's a
even
compliment.
know
Jimmy
what
waffle
that
buns,
means.
Marshall. All right, what'd you have? You didn't go down.
I did not
Oh,
because, again, if you can see, I have two babies.
2 babies.
That prevents me from walking more than 2 feet a day. And my kid got his tonsils taken out, so
Oh,
that was
that's
our
rough.
exciting time.
yeah.
Being in the hospital and recovery.
And your son's about to turn 6. Mine just did.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Couple
Happy
days
birthday,
ago.
Shepherd.
Happy birthday.
And we got him a little turntable.
Oh, really?
He's already mastered it.
It's pretty cool.
Really?
Actually. It's a
Yeah.
it's a VTech, so it's like
Okay.
it's made for kids, but it's got like 15 different preset songs,
Mhm.
and then but they're just like little beats or whatever. But then there's like 15 different sounds that you can change in the song to like make the beats different. So he'll like get it real soft and then like add in and boom boom boom, and then there's also a little light on it that lights up. So he'll turn off the lights and then like there's like
His
a
whole
light.
light show.
He's having
It
a
is.
raver
Wow.
in his own room.
I'm
I
impressed.
sent you a
That's
video of it.
amazing. I know. I saw it. It's
It's-
awesome.
It's really cool. So, Jimmy, any birthdays in your life?
Not yet. Not until next year. January will be mine, and we'll be turning 26.
Oh man, you are old.
Yeah, having a quarter life crisis right now.
Old because you're gonna live to be 100,
Hopefully,
Yes.
either that or 35.
and not if you don't eat your vegetables, Jimmy.
Hey, I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
So, hey, this week we're gonna be talking about Jim Carrey's new documentary.
It's not. It's a documentary about Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's Jim Carrey's documentary,
he didn't make it.
right? But it's about him.
About Jim Carrey.
That is a good clarification, though.
It's
for
true.
real.
Okay, bears where they shouldn't be,
Okay.
and then
Of course.
elemental, and then maybe
If it fits in.
my father's dragon. Like not my father's dragon. Like he's not great. not that kind of
My
dragon.
father's
Dragging
dragon.
around.
It's really been
father's
dragging recently.
No. Yeah.
He's a-
It's a dragon.
Yeah. So, Jimothy, you watched this new documentary about Jim Carrey.
Yes, it was not Jim Carrey's new documentary, but it was a YouTube documentary by the YouTuber named Dodford.
Dodford?
Dodford, D-O-D-F-O-R-D.
Dodford. We got
Dodford.
Dodford here.
Yep, Dodford, if you're watching, we really like your work. So the...
Jimmy does. I've never seen
I
it.
really like
I
your work.
like the name Dodford.
Yeah, so he has been on YouTube for just a couple of years now, but more recently he has been making these YouTube documentaries about these famous people. So one of his more recent ones is about Adam Sandler. I think that got like 4.3 million views. The Jim Carrey one, that one just dropped like 2 weeks ago, and it's already at over 1 million views. And I think he's got like 200,000 subscribers. But the cool thing about these documentaries is because on the YouTube platform, they have a kind of subsection of YouTube called video essays, where you do kind of these video essays about these different people. And so you're kind of
Sounds cool.
so you're kind of talking through their life and everything like that. But what Dodford does is he collects all these different clips from interviews, talk shows, and all this stuff, where in the Jim Carrey video, basically like all the dialogue was from these clips.
So he didn't really talk in them.
Correct. So it was Jim Carrey and these other people kind of telling his life story through it. So it was like super well done. It was
So it's basically a clip compilation that
yes.
tells a story. So he's not, I mean, he curates all that stuff to make the story, but he's not like the voiceover. And
Correct.
this year, Jim Carrey. Okay, wow.
Yeah, so it's super well done.
I like that idea.
Yeah, and like he does it with the sound design, the music, and everything. It's super cinematic, and
So then
makes
it
you a little
really is
emotional.
Jim Carrey's documentary. That's him talking.
Jim Carrey, according to Jim
So,
Carrey.
yeah, Jim Carrey, according to Jim
So
Carrey.
you said it's emotional.
Yeah. So there are probably just because the music's playing,
Oh.
like that sad music. But so there were a couple kind of interesting ideas. I'm on the. Where's my daily here? Yep, that's exactly. So the title of the documentary was Jim Carrey Doesn't Exist, which is a pretty good title.
That is.
Does he do this with multiple celebrities?
Yeah, so
He
that's
just
kind of
said
his
it did with
thing.
Adam Sandler.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
I missed that.
He did.
Yeah, you were
one-
looking up the Stranger Things cast. I saw it on your phone.
His voice cast is in My Father's Dragon. I had to be accurate.
Yeah, so he's done. Jim Carrey did Drew Barrymore. I think he did one. He's doing one on Keanu
But
Reeves.
are they all the same format where he doesn't talk, but it's them?
So yeah, his earlier ones, it was more of his dialogue and then less of kind of the clips. But he's given himself kind of a personal challenge where he just allows the clips to speak for themselves, essentially.
Man, how many clips would you have
So
to
many, because
watch?
it's like a
At least
25-minute documentary,
That's crazy.
and he basically like scripts out the whole thing, like the story part of it
Yeah.
first, and then you have all the clips. So I'm sure.
Wait, how does he script the story part, and then finds clips that fits with that story?
No, so kind of both at the same time. So you kind of look at all these different clips, and he has a team that helps him research and that kind
okay.
of thing.
I was
So
gonna say, that's a huge undertaking.
yeah, so he makes one video a month, but these
Whoa.
are like these big things, and even though he's got 200,000 subscribers, he has multiple videos that have over 1 million views.
Yeah.
So they're really well done. But I know Jim Carrey from like all his funny movies.
Yeah.
But the title that Jim Carrey doesn't exist, I think that was interesting, and because at the very beginning of the documentary, it says he's on a talk show, and the person said, "What's the real Jim Carrey like?" And Jim Carrey said, "I don't exist. They're all characters, including Jim Carrey." So starting off right out of the gate.
I think I've heard him
So-
talk about that.
Was that earlier on? Because I feel like Jim Carrey now is very different than Jim Carrey back then. So,
Yeah.
so do you know how recent that clip?
Yeah, so that one, I would have to go back and watch it because the cool thing he does too is he finds much older clips and newer clips,
Yeah.
and then kind of interweaves and goes back and forth in the past and in the present and things like that.
Because I remember watching Jim Carrey on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with
Oh yeah,
that one guy, Jerry Seinfeld.
that's the guy.
Yeah.
And Jerry Seinfeld pulls up to pick him up, and he like climbs over his fence. Jim Carrey, like wherever he lives,
Yeah.
he's like, instead of just coming out of the gate. But it's a tall. It's not like, it's a like protective wall. It's like this brick wall. He like climbs over the top and falls down and all this stuff. And I don't really remember much else about the interview except that moment, because it's like he's always over the top and
Yeah.
kind of crazy, but his more recent stuff, he not conspiracy theory, but a little bit, because I'm
Yeah.
like I saw, and I don't know if this clip was on there, but there was a talk show where he like basically says to the talk show host, it may have been who's the guy that was the American Steve Colbert.
Okay.
So wait, is it Steve Colbert?
Yeah.
That does. He had the what? Yeah. So he like says like, hey, you're part of the system or whatever. He's like, you're hired by the government to just entertain us and keep us down, and like keep us from like actually figuring out what's really going on. Like you're just one of the people that basically, like, not the Illuminati, but kind of like
Yeah.
you're like there's a government that's making you this talk show guy that just keeps people watching more stuff, taking in all this media stuff, and you're there to distract us from what's really real and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
And
Jim Carrey was saying this to him?
Yeah.
Oh.
And he's like kind of laughed, but like Jim Carrey seemed serious when
Yeah.
he's saying it. And that's what, the character part of him, you're like, is this real?
Well, I think I feel like, well, you've watched this documentary, so you probably know more, but from just the clips that I've seen, he seems very trapped. Like
Yeah.
he can't be himself because nobody knows what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he's trying to be serious,
Yeah.
then people are like, oh, he's just being over the top, like dry humor.
Well, one of the interesting kind of arcs in this is because a lot of his early stuff that was really successful was kind of this very over the top physical comedy, and that's what he was known for. And then he went through this period of, and I think Adam Sandler did the same thing, where he tried some serious roles, and they were not received very well at all.
Well, because when you have this persona of a character and you try to retract that, people are like, "Wow, I want the Mask. I want Ace Ventura. I want this over-the-top funny character."
And it's hard to not even see that when he's playing a character.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so, but I think it was the Man on the Moon where he was making the Andy Kaufman story.
Yeah.
I think that's, at least from the little bit I know, like that's where he changed, like that, because he became that character of Andy Kaufman so well or whatever.
Yeah.
That he kind of got lost in that persona of Andy Kaufman. And I heard that I heard that he was like a jerk on set. I heard that he like, because he embodied who Andy Kaufman was and then forgot who Jim Carrey was. And so he kind of was like, this is how Andy Kaufman would do this. And Andy Kaufman, I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he was known for just being like, you never, like with him, like you never knew what was real and what wasn't.
Oh, okay.
And so, cause he like did stand up comedy. I think he was on SNL. Like he's the one that, I mean, the story that I've heard is like, he did a stand up show where the people that came to a show, he just sat there and read The Great Gatsby.
I think I remember you saying that.
And,
oh my goodness!
And nobody knew
if
it was funny or and he just read it, and then eventually like people were just leaving, and then whoever was left, he just took them out for milk and cookies.
What?
And so it's stuff like that you're like, oh, this guy's really bizarre. And like there was another thing where he did a stunt where he would like fight women, and this is like basically like I mean it's like a wrestling type thing. He's like, oh, I can beat up whoever, and then this other wrestler guy's like, you're no good, or like it was boxing or wrestling or something, and then he like beats him up on like this wrestling event thing, and then he's like goes on a talk show with this guy, and like he's like in a cast and like a neck brace, and he's like, yeah, this guy really beat me up. And like, is this real? Like he wore it around for a while. You're like, I don't know if this is real or not.
Yeah.
And so
That's so weird.
goes back to everything is wrestling. Watch that episode.
Everything is.
Oh my goodness.
Well, because it blurs those lines. And so then when Jim Carrey already has this persona of, I don't really know who I am because I always have to be the funny guy or whatever, and then pulling that back to Andy Kaufman, who also does all this weird stuff, and when he gets lost in that, it's like, wow, I don't even know.
Well, it is interesting because there's a line in the documentary that says something along the lines of, because they were talking about the mask, and he's like, well, everyone wears a mask. And what was interesting, because, you know, we have the Jim Carrey when he started, and I didn't know kind of, because the interviewer said, you have such an incredible talent for physical comedy. Where did that come from? And he says, desperation. I had a sick mom. I wanted to make her feel better. So he apparently had like a really sick mom, and like as a kid, what he would do is like his whole goal in life was to make her feel better. And going into his comedy and kind of his whole life, I think that's where the character of Jim Carrey was it. He wants to, his whole kind of life goal is to make people feel better.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's even at the expense of himself. Like,
yeah, exactly. So what was useful for him, rather than focusing on, well, who am I as a person? Who am I really? I'm going to make this Jim Carrey character who their whole goal is to make people feel better.
So was his dad, I think you said he talked about his dad some. What was his dad's role in all that? Like,
yeah, so his dad, he said his dad was a natural born performer, and I think he played the saxophone, but at... Hey, did you play the saxophone?
I did.
Look at that. And then at one point he gave up...
You're Jim Carrey's dad!
He gave up on his dreams and worked like a real job, but he said when he started his acting career, it was kind of him and his dad's dream for Jim to be a successful actor.
Yeah.
So, and kind of his first big break came like 6 months before his dad died. So he was really glad that his dad was able to see, hey, this has worked out.
And so his dad didn't pressure him to do that. Like, there is like hey, you're good at this.
Yeah, it was kind of a joint thing where it's they knew that they had kind of the only talking about the worldview of the documentary. A lot of the language that you use is talking about like speaking your dreams into the universe.
Okay.
And so there's a couple of one of the lines towards the end. He said, "I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it." So because he was saying that all these things in his life. He says, "Why am I so blessed? I've had endless gifts in my life, and they were all things that at one point in time, I sat down and made myself believe they were possible." So he was talking about this story where he would go up before he was like super famous and rich, where he would go up to this hill and overlook the city and just imagine himself being this super successful actor, super rich, and basically all the things, and then just asking the universe for it.
So, is there another quote that he has about him, like saying, "I wish everybody would be as rich and successful as I am to see that."
That's not what makes you happy.
Yeah, I feel like that's a famous quote from him.
Yeah, and so even though he achieved all that, he realizes like that's not what causes.
Well, and
happiness.
because what I think I've realized too is, or what he's realized is, throughout the documentary, he kind of achieves all these hopes and dreams, and then. The Jim Carrey now talks about much deeper things where he says, okay, fame and fortune aren't going to make you happy. And he does get into kind of more spiritual-ish things. Like he used the word, he says he's expanded consciousness now. Uh-huh. So he's like, in this interview, he said, I am the audience right now. I'm like, I don't know what that means. But it sounds deep. So it's like he's kind of got all the worldly possessions, and now he's kind of questioning, is there something bigger here?
So and this I think goes back to Ecclesiastes, where Solomon, who is like everything's meaningless.
Yeah,
like it's meaningless, everything's meaningless, and the whole book of Ecclesiastes is really depressing because it's this guy like trying to find meaning in the things of this world, and it's like. He does all the successful stuff. He's like, I've had all the successful stuff. I've tried to find it in folly and being a fool, being an idiot. I've tried to find it in
work,
wine, women, and Scrabble.
Scrabble.
And work. I've tried to find it in all this stuff. And and the conclusion is just love God. He's like, this is what's meaningful, like following after the Lord. So hopefully Jim Carrey will find the Lord. But it also reminds me a little bit of Robin Williams. I don't know if you ever saw like the interviews with him early on. Like he would come out and like they would ask him questions. He's like, "Oh, how," and he would like go into a character, and he like couldn't be, because I think one of the interviewers asked him that, and he's like, "No, I have to do this character," because I think he had stage fright and stuff like that. But going into these other personas kind of like helped him to be the guy that he that we knew as Robin Williams. Yeah. But I mean, he ended up committing suicide. And so it's like these weird, unless you think the Illuminati got him.
It's like Tupac.
Look up that theory. But it's, and you see this with a lot of comedians. Like Owen Wilson was another one that attempted suicide. And I'm trying to think if there's any other famous comedians but like.
I feel like there's a lot.
Yeah. There's just this. Like what you said at the beginning, like of his life was, I'm trying to entertain, like to make my mom happy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I always have to do this. And I mean, I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a little bit funny at times. And so
Chris the funny guy.
But that's something I had to wrestle with, especially in college. Cause I found that people would come to me like when they were in a good mood and stuff. But like whenever people, or when there were serious moments, I felt like it was hard for me to be serious because people had that idea of me of like, oh, this is the funny guy. And so even now, like when I preach and stuff, people are like, oh, this guy has a little bit of depth to him that we didn't realize.
Just a little bit.
It's not just a funny guy. And so, but that's hard. Yeah. And so like when you have that, when your identity is, I'm the person that's going to make everybody else happy, even at my own expense, that's when it becomes dangerous, because it's like, I'm doing these things in order for other people to succeed where I am hurting, but I can't tell anybody that because I don't want to make them sad, because my job is to make them happy.
Or even on the other, I think maybe not all, I think comedians are probably like that, but more people, because he was talking about how everyone wears a mask.
Yeah.
So not a persona to make people happy, but a persona to make yourself look better. So you might kind of put on this persona of I'm this way, and then you try to present yourself like that. You're not your true, authentic self. And then when you do have those hard times and you do encounter those things, you might not show those to people because you're like, okay, this doesn't line up with the person that I've shown people.
Right.
So I don't want to show them my weakness. And that can be dangerous too if you kind of just keep that all within yourself.
Yeah, I was trying to find a way, like, how can we pare this down to something that we would face or like that our listeners would face because they're not famous, but I still think the struggle is there because of social media.
Oh, yeah.
And like pleasing your audience and having this kind of persona on social media, but then how that affects you in your everyday life. And I wonder, of the people closest to the celebrities, like, did they experience the real Jim Carrey, or was he feeling this way around them too? Like, even with his mom, like, did he struggle? It sounds like he struggled being like a normal kid, just even around his mom. And that can have really lasting effects. But I would say, like, for listeners, what do we...
Well, I think in the church world, that's another thing. Like,
That's
you
true.
feel like you have to be this perfect person and have it all figured out and not have doubts and things like that. And it's like, oh, no, I struggle. Like, this happened in my life and I don't know. I feel like God's not there. Or I feel like all this stuff. And so...
Yeah. And you feel like sometimes you can't bring that to the people in the church because they already have all the answers or they figured it out and you haven't or something.
Yeah. And that was another thing growing up. Because you feel like at church, you have to be your best Christian self. And it's like, oh, if I sin or if I have temptation or if I struggle with things, I can't let anybody know that because they've already figured it out. And nobody has. Like,
and that's why people, when they come to church, if they don't have a background in church, one of the reasons they say they don't go is because churches are full of hypocrites, where people that live just as bad as me during the week, but then they go in on Sunday morning and they've got it all figured out and they're just holier than thou.
Yeah. Well, and like we talked about comedians committing suicide, but pastors committing suicide is another big one. They're like these guys that you're like, oh, they had it all figured out. And like, why are they committing suicide?
Wait a minute.
Right.
Death to Deconstruction, that book is about a pastor that like really struggled in his faith and like the whole book, there's a narrative throughout about him dealing with suicidal thoughts and all this stuff, but like nobody knew that. And one of the most chilling lines was he's like my thought process was he's like trying to find the right day to commit suicide because he's like, if I do it on this day, will that give them enough time to find a new pastor by Sunday to preach? And they're like, it's this dealing with stuff on the inside that like nobody knew about, and and you feel like I have to be at this level all the time because if they knew what I was thinking or dealing with, then I couldn't be the pastor anymore. I couldn't be in the small group anymore. I couldn't be a part of the church because I'm struggling with stuff that's so deep and so heart-wrenching that one, I don't want to make other people sad, but at the same time, I don't want people to know what's really going on because I feel like if I say that, then they're going to cast me out, and then I don't have anybody.
Which is a really unfortunate position that the church has put itself in a way like that you don't feel. I feel like church should be the place.
Yeah.
You wrestle out these things and you seek the Lord through His Word. Like in all of those really hard topics and wrestle together, because when you wrestle alone, you end up just finding the people who agree with you or.
But sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, but do you think that it's the church that puts on that persona, or it's us as people that is like, oh well, I feel like I can't share it because I don't want to bring other people down because again my personality is like I want to make people.
I think it's both, and that's where I feel like in a way we can relate to celebrities because probably the people closest to them want to see the real person or whatever. They don't want to see this stage persona, but you can't ignore like the masses. The people who saw a different side of Jim Carrey were like, no, and he wasn't as successful. There were consequences. And I think that happens very easily in a church when a pastor or even just a congregant admits to these feelings of doubt, and then the masses of the church kind of, or the louder voices rather, cast them aside or make them feel alienated.
Well, and I think it's because I would agree that it's definitely both. And I think one of the reasons why you don't kind of present yourself as showing the things that you really struggle with is because everyone presents themselves as having it figured out and not having those struggles. You're like, I'm the only one who struggles with this. I'm the only one who's really messed up here. So I don't want to be the outsider. But if everyone would be like, hey, let's just be honest with what we struggle with. And then we realize everyone's kind of messed up.
Wait, was that a John Ortberg book? You're messed up just like everybody else, or it's something kind of along those lines. But again, this is one of the lies of Satan of like, you're dealing with this by yourself. And that's isolation. What no temptation has seized you except that's what is common to man. And it says everything that we were tempted with, Jesus was tempted with. And so you're not going to be tempted with anything that Jesus himself hasn't been tempted with and defeated that temptation. But also like everybody else, and it may be like different levels of it, but it's like, oh, you struggle with lust, you struggle with pride, you struggle with these things. Like everybody else has too. And so so the way that you struggle with it may be like yours maybe look different than mine, but it's still the same root sin. And so it's like, hey, we're all on the same page. Let's work on this together. And it's not easy to get there. I mean, I have guys that I meet with on Wednesday mornings that we talk through all the stuff that we struggle with and all that. And so to me it's been so freeing because I don't have to carry those things alone. And so find those people you can be honest with and real with.
It's true.
All right. Wow, that was heavy. So let's lighten the mood with some Florida foibles.
Look at that.
All right. Okay, this one was sent in by my mom. So thanks, Mom.
Really?
Yeah.
It
was from the Weather Channel app. So, but
those videos are crazy sometimes.
Yeah. So this one is back to the animals in Florida.
So many animals.
It was a black bear. But it got on a boat. So somehow it got to the boat docks and got on this boat. And it's just like wandering around on the deck of a boat. And so there were some bear facts. So there's like 4,000 black bears in Florida. And I think that animals are starting to like take over in Florida. Like I think they're becoming like a unified.
A little bit more domesticated.
Yeah, because they're getting
in a union now.
They're going to get on boats and then travel across to Mexico. I don't know.
Monkey Island, they got off of there. We talked about.
Oh yeah, that's right. Monkey Island.
Now there's monkeys at Popeyes.
now the bears are going to drive them to some other places. It's like a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World where they're taking the dinosaurs to the bears are going to start driving people. Or maybe it was one of those Chinese bears in the zoo.
Oh yeah,
just a man dressed up.
It's a real person.
Yeah,
so weird.
I saw that, but so I think the animals are starting to take over and be part of the world around us. They're coming.
Starting to be a part of the world around us.
So this was just a bear on a boat.
Yeah,
bear on boat.
but it was just.
Was it by itself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So a solo bear on a boat.
Other people on the boat.
Solo.
So it was the
Solo
boat was
bear on
parked at a dock, and so this bear just
It's on and starts taking it down the river.
No, it didn't drive. No, it didn't really drive.
Okay, so it's just bear on a boat.
Bear on a boat. So it's just wandering around on the deck of this boat. Like, oh, it's locked. The boat was still.
It's like the same as they get into cars and stuff. It's probably just looking for food.
Yeah, but this would require it to actually. Because have you ever seen like a
boat
dock and a wharf? Like it would have had to have gone pretty far off land to get to this boat.
That's true.
Bear was hungry.
Bear on a boat.
Bear on a boat.
I feel like Bear on a Boat would be a good kids book. I'll write that.
I was thinking that with the little bear that wants the moon, or you know, like I think it's a little bear. Yeah,
Little Bear. You can't have that wish, Little Bear. I say that to my kids quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
That's one of the
things our mom used to say to us all the time.
Yeah, thanks. So speaking of
bears on a boat,
parents. So I watched Elementals this week. It's on Disney Plus.
Elementals?
Elemental. Sorry.
Okay.
I call this movie wrong all the time.
I'm fact checking Chris.
I kept saying Elemental. Yeah, I know.
It's Jim Carrey's documentary.
Cereals. So Elemental. But is it the newest Pixar movie? Elemental?
Well, Wish isn't the one about the true wish or something coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Did it come out yet?
I don't know if it's come out yet.
But Elemental.
It's pretty new.
But Elemental, I think, is the latest.
I really enjoyed this movie.
Really?
It was different than I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but it was a lot deeper than I was expecting to get into. And so so this might not be as much for kids as you would think, but visually it was cool.
It's cool.
It's really
I've seen
cool.
clips of it because Amos likes to watch it.
Yeah, so it's a really neat visual masterpiece. Pixar, I feel like, always does that. Always pushes the storytelling and elements,
the elements
of what animation is and all that. But the overall story, the overarching, sure.
Oh God, this is one we talked about.
Okay, so no, is basically these people came from the Fire Nation. The Fire Nation attack.
This is Avatar.
I was like, yeah, this is Avatar.
No, and so they come to the big city, and have left their homeland, and now they're in the city that doesn't really like the fire people that much, and so they try to find a home and they can't, and so they go to basically what would be like Chinatown or Little Italy, like one of those,
like a refugee type of scenario.
No, it's just kind of like their own area.
Okay.
So like Chinatown or Little Italy, like I just said.
No, but I was like, are they kind of paralleling the whole like refugee idea?
Maybe a little bit, but it's like it's an area where
immigrant, you know.
Yes, that. So they're there, but they were kind of like as they were trying to find places, people were like, no, you can't live here, or no, this isn't, like, because they would go to all these rental properties.
Yeah.
So they found a place, and so there was like this fire town people, and so, but this dad opens this shop, and so it's kind of the story of him and his daughter, and how they're trying to find, like, she's about to take over the shop, but you kind of learn that like maybe this isn't what she really wants.
Oh.
But she feels like she has to do it because he has given up so much. And so one of the lines, I thought this was great. Face ID. Okay. Sometimes someone makes a sacrifice so big that all you can do is sacrifice your own life.
Whoa.
And so
reciprocity.
Well, no, I was thinking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Because he gave us this giant sacrifice. And so in it though, like, we're supposed to give our life, and then it's like, but maybe that's not what I want to do. And so she like fights back against that. And then so that's one of the plots. And then the other plot is that she kind of starts to fall in love with a water elemental, and there's
a water, and she's a fire,
and she's fire. Yeah.
Oh man,
classic.
It
Romeo
gets
Juliet.
steamy.
Oh, this was PG.
Yeah.
So, but he said, they said you couldn't go in there. Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do with your life? So they're like, oh, they said you couldn't do this, but why does anyone?
The cool wind of teenage rebellion.
Yeah, and so it's like, why? So why does anyone get to like dictate what you get to do with your life? And so that's kind of the struggle. She's like, okay, I want to please my family and carry on my dad's dream. Like, he gave up so much. He left his home, and he's been here, and he has the shop, and he wants me to take it over. But I want to do this other thing with my life. And so she struggles against that. And so it's just kind of that, like, but she never talks to her dad. Like, that's the thing that Wade, he's the water guy. He's like, hey, go.
It's a good name for him.
Yeah, Wade, and her name's Ember. So he's like, hey,
nice.
Will you, like, just go talk to him. Like, tell him how you're feeling and stuff. She's like, no, I have to do this. Like, he wants me to take over the shop and all this stuff.
I'm glad that he was encouraging her to talk to him.
Yeah, because that was like, he's like, tell him what you want to do. And so she's like, no, I know that this is what he wants. And so, should I spoil it? I don't know.
Spoiler alert.
Well, because the sacrifice part is what's interesting, right? Because she wants to honor her father because she knows that he's given up so much. And so, but it ends up like he wanted her to be able to have the things that he didn't have.
Oh.
And so that's when, like,
that's deep.
Yeah. And so when I looked, like, through the worldview, like, when she said that line, I was like, oh, this is, like, Jesus wants us to give our life to him, but it's not so that he can oppress us and pigeonhole us into this thing that we don't want to do.
Sure.
Right.
It's to give us life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's what they were trying to come across in that movie, but it was like,
this is why we do Worldview Finders, because truth comes out in all storytelling.
What's that?
It does. No.
Let's get a different sound effect on the soundboard, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The snapping of a Slim Jim. But it was funny because I was talking with my my two daughters afterward, or the next day, and our oldest daughter, she's like, "Why do we have to talk about this? Why did you get a podcast?" Because she listens to it.
Yeah,
she listens to it.
talk about it.
Leave me alone and go talk about it on the podcast.
But then Sonny was like, "I want to hear about this," and so she was trying to engage me in the conversation. But I think sometimes we miss that when we're like just watching the movie, and that's why we do this. And that's what I was thinking about. I was like, oh, I like worldview stuff because it's kind of like a puzzle. Like you're trying to like, oh, what are they really trying to get across? What do they want me to figure out and all this stuff? And so, and of course it's Pixar and Disney. And so there was a brief moment where there's two water elementals that are two girls that they introduce it like this is her and her girlfriend at the dinner table. Like that was the line. It was that's the line, nothing else. But again, it's this subtle like it's in there, and so everything's in there for a reason. I mean, they left it in there, and so just be aware of that. But again, like the overall story, I think was really interesting because it's just about sacrificing the things that we feel like because she felt shame of not wanting to like carry on her dad's legacy or whatever, but she's like, I feel like I have to do this because he gave up so much, and so. I want to ask you guys, like, did you ever feel from your parents like you had to do something to be successful? Like maybe not carry on the line of what they did, but what, like, did you ever feel like not even that they were pressuring you overtly, but like maybe you just felt that from them?
They listen to the show, so
yeah.
No, I don't. I need a minute to think actually, because I feel like they were pretty open and encouraging about things, even like who I would date. Like I just remember this conversation with my mom where like our grandma was fairly racist, and so she would talk to us about.
Shout out to grandma.
She would always tell us like you can only date white people, and then I remember like leaving her house, and my mom would always say like because of the generations it's going to be hard for like our older family to accept, but I just want you to know like we don't hold to that.
Okay.
And that was like a positive thing where it's like I was feeling pressure from maybe my grandma or whoever. Yeah. But then they did a good job of being like, hey, actually,
you don't have to follow.
You don't have to follow that. So I felt like that was one where it's just very aware.
You date this guy to spite your grandma. You can only date. No, but I think for me,
I'm trying to think though.
Well, so our brother went into banking, and that's what our dad does or did, and so before he retired. But I think that was one of the things I'm like, oh, do I need to do banking? Like, is that because I mean it is a very lucrative. Like they've done well for themselves.
Yeah, they've done very well.
And so it's like, oh, should I do that too? And I remember as a Rafferty's, me and mom and dad, and I told them that I wanted to be a youth pastor, and so it was interesting because I remember the conversation a little bit of like, well, why don't you use that as a backup? Like, why don't you do something else and then maybe use that, like, do that on the side or but it wasn't like you can't do that, but it's just like, have you thought through these other things? Like, because that's not youth pastoring is not a lucrative job. And so like, will you be able to take care of family and all that stuff? And so that was kind of their concerns, but it was never like, you can't do that or whatever. And now I don't feel that at all. Like I think they're proud of me. No, but it is like they are, and I know they are, and they tell me that. So, but it's one of those things that like I think a little bit I felt some pressure of like, oh, is this the right decision, or am I like? And I didn't feel like I was going to shame the family or anything like that, but it was kind of one of those moments of like, oh, is this really what the Lord's calling me to do, or do I need to rethink some of this? And so.
Well, I do think I don't think I had that for myself, but I do think that it would be really tough to have parent that were like super successful in something or famous or something like that, because you as their child, you're like, okay, well, there's the bar, and then anything less than that, I just feel like I'm a failure. I'm always going to live in their shadow.
Like
And
Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks' son. I'm like, that guy's
no one knows
the
that.
worst actor. I mean, he's in stuff. You're like, oh, he's not the worst actor, but you kind of like, oh, is he gonna? He's not very good.
But you compare them to their parents. You're like,
Oh yeah.
this was this guy, and you're working at Rafferty's.
Yeah. I feel like those kids need to just go into a totally different line of work.
Rafferty's is a sponsor today.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Rafferty's.
Potato soup for the soul. So no, I think we got to wrap this up because we got a meeting to get to.
We got a meeting.
But yeah, so I think like with Jim Carrey and with the elemental thing, like there's this and I think sometimes it's not even intentional, but there's like a burden that we feel that we have to do. And so kids or students listening to this, like talk to your parents. Like feel like if you feel like I feel like I have to do this because like talk about it, because and that goes back to the openness of like you feel a lot of times we feel this pressure that we can't get out because we feel like, oh, if I talk about it.
I don't care about your meeting. We're going to talk about my father's dragon.
Okay. All right.
You're going to have to be late, Brett. Sorry.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So, while you're talking about this kid's pressure, so I watched My Father's Dragon. It's on Netflix.
I'm going to send a text. I'm going to be late.
Adrian said she doesn't care.
Adrian shows up late and then.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
All right.
So it's a kid and his mom. They run a shop in the country, and like hard times befall this country. It's like very, I don't know, like a quick kind of montage of where they end up. They end up in the city, and he's like, "Mom, we can recreate our shop in the city, and we'll be fine." And he feels this pressure to like try to help her in any way, and he has this like big jar of coins, and she's just like trying to find a job and pay rent. And so she like needs to use his jar of coins to just make phone calls at a phone booth. It's like kind of old timey.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, no, Mom, this is for the shop. But it's like, you see her struggle where she's like, I need to just find a job and I need coins, and so they have this kind of big blowout because she's like, you're trying to sabotage me. And he's like, all I'm doing is trying to help. And so he runs away, finds a magical cat played by Whoopi Goldberg, which is amazing.
As you do.
Yeah. And she sends him on a quest to an island to free a dragon that's been held captive on this island. And so in that, he helps the dragon, but he's doing the same thing that he was doing to his mom, where it's like he feels so much pressure that he can't leave them alone to do that, like to discover themselves. So he wants to help, and the dragon is kind of skittish and scared and a little flighty. And so he's like, he says to the boy, he's like, you know everything. You have the answers to everything. You're never scared. You always know what you're doing. And the boy, like, you can tell he's struggling with that, but he's like, yeah, I do. Like, and he just has this kind of false confidence, and then just gets to a point where he has to let the dragon go. And so you can see the parallel and kind of the coming of age in a way where he's growing up to be more aware of like what other people need. And which is I felt like a different worldview than I've ever seen portrayed in like a kid's movie before.
Yeah.
Where the kid's becoming more self-aware of like his own selfishness, and needing to let people do their own thing, but be like how to be a good helper.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would highly recommend it. My kids really liked it.
It's on Netflix.
My Father's Dragon.
But I like unwanted gifts. Like where somebody thinks that they're going to give you something that's going to help you, and that I mean, the book Toxic Charity is kind of a little bit of that of like I'm trying to help somebody, but the way that I'm helping them is actually hurting them.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, and so, and I think like with the elemental, like she thinks that, like if I do this, then my father's going to approve of me, and like he's going to like me, and I can't let him down or disappoint him. But like that's not what he wants. Like he wants her to dream big and to do all these great things.
Or what they really need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And because there wasn't like in the elemental, like you didn't ever feel that the father was like pressuring her into this, but it's just kind of like, hey, you're working the shop and like you're going to take it over someday. Like it wasn't, he didn't ever like put that on her, but she just took it on herself. And so,
yeah, if you don't have those conversations, you try to give people what you think they need, not what they tell you they actually need.
yeah. And that, I mean, with where you work, like we're doing that with the schools. Like a lot of times churches will be like, oh, we're going to partner with the school. And we go in and say, hey, here's what you need. And we're going to help fix you and all this stuff. And like, no, we just need some T-shirts for our kids. Could you do that? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. So it's that kind of like, yeah. When you go into a situation, it's like ask them what they want, ask them what they need, and then help them with that instead of just, hey, I'm going to give you this because I think you want this.
Yeah,
Or I think you need. I've seen this need in you, so I'm going to give this to you. Like, well, I just need a coin to call somebody. No, you need this money to give it to this.
Yeah, it takes a conversation rather than an inner dialogue with yourself trying to decide what they need. It's like, hey, let's talk about what you really need and I'll help you with that.
That's been the underlying theme of the whole episode. Talk to people, have conversations, share who you really are.
Share burdens.
Yeah, because when we do that, when we carry one another's burdens, because I mean that's, I don't know, it's a Bible verse.
It's in there, we promise.
Yeah, but that's what you guys talking about, because that's what we're supposed to do. Because carry one another's burdens.
Well, so yeah, it's the isolation versus community. You got it.
Yes, carry one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. It's Galatians 6:2.
Oh yeah, Galatians 6:2.
You know that one. No, but yeah, because for if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Let each one examine his own work. Then he can take pride in himself and not compare himself with someone else. For each one will carry his own load.
Yeah.
So
I feel like when you help in your own way, then you have these unintended consequences that you don't want to happen because you're trying to help them, but you realize, like in My Father's Dragon, the boy realized like he's actually holding them back from being able to grow because he wasn't allowing him to like do the things he needed. And I think that definitely comes up in poverty situations like toxic charity.
yeah.
Where
Yeah,
if you
talking
just
about
giving.
Yeah, and talking about selfishness, when you go into it, you have to make sure you're checking yourself. And the goal is not that you feel good that you help someone, is more than you actually help someone.
Right.
You're like, I just want to feel good about helping people.
Well,
It's easier.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's easier to just kind of do a one and done thing and feel good about yourself instead of investing a lot of time listening and walking alongside somebody.
Well, that's verse 1 of Galatians 6. But
Yeah.
if a person is discovered in some sin, you who are spiritual, restore such a person in a spirit of gentleness. Pay close attention to yourselves so that you are not tempted too. And so it's like, restore them, but help them in that, and like, carry one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So it's like, we're designed that way, to carry one another's burdens and to lift the other person up and to encourage them and all that. But if we're doing it with the spirit of selfishness of like, oh, I know all the answers, I'm going to fix this person. Like, no, carry one of those burdens, because you have burdens too.
Yeah.
And so as I carry your burdens, you're going to carry mine and help a brother out.
We all need somebody to lean on.
Lean on me.
Send us on.
When
Sing us
you're
out.
not strong.
Sing us out, Chris.
Yeah.
Because I'll be your friend.
We're getting copyrighted.
WorldView
I'll
Finder
help you
episode
carry
27.
7.
Gosh. All right. 27. Oh, no. Was that the movie with Jim Carrey? 27 or 47? 42?
I have no idea.
There was a movie that he's like, there's a number 23.
Sure.
That's nothing to do with
65.
Where he's obsessed with a number. All right.
He's Chris.
anything. Okay.
Hey, everybody, I'm Chris.
I'm Adrian.
And I'm Jimmy.
And this has been WorldView Finder, episode 27. We'll see you next time.